You're listening to Pole Parlour, a fun, inspiring podcast for all those bewitched by pole dance. Each week, your Madam Crimson Minxxx has candid conversation with unique, engaging individuals from within and around the pole dance community. Pole Parlour is passionate about preaching creativity, soulful sensuality, and empowerment through pole dance.
You know how we do.
Welcome everyone to Pole Parlour. This is episode 40, Move Shimmy. I'm your host, Crimson Minxxx. This week on the podcast, we have Aussie pole babe Move Shimmy. On this episode, we talk about how Shimmy transitioned from corporate lawyer to professional pole dancer, what inspired her and her sister, Maddie Sparkle, to create two of the world's most entertaining pole competitions, her view on feminism and pole dance, her deep love of the pole community, and dealing with haters on social media. And don't forget to check out Michelle's post-podcast interview on the blog at poleparlour.com, where she shares her favorite photos, music, video, and more. And while you're there, check out the Pole Parlour shop, where you can find some fun, cheeky pole wear. So now, without further delay, here is Move Shimmy.
Now greetings to the world. Vice of the one big gangzilla alongside Skrillex. Them for no. Ooh-wee.
Welcome, Move Shimmy, to the Pole Parlour podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for being here, and thank you for being the first guest of 2017. Let's jump right in. For how long have you been poling, and how did you first discover pole dance?
I'm in my 11th year of pole right now. So I started a long time ago, and I started because a friend of my sister's really wanted to try it. So she convinced my sister to do it, and my sister called me and said, let's try pole dancing. And I said no. I said I didn't want to do it. I thought it sounded really stupid. I had this idea of a bunch of girls just sort of walking around a pole. I had no idea what pole was all about. Yeah. And that's because it was, 10 or 11 years ago, it wasn't really very mainstream at all. Not that it's not really mainstream still, but it's getting there a little bit more. But it was very fringe, and it was very wasn't even really recognized as a form of fitness at all. It was just kind of a bit of a gimmicky thing to do. But I'd just come back from overseas, and I wasn't working full time at that point. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and my sister can be very persuasive. So I just said, all right, fine, I'll go along and we'll just do it. And we did one class, and I think out of the three of us, I was the one who immediately was like, oh my God, I love this. Because when I was in high school and primary school, I did a lot of gymnastics. And I stopped doing gymnastics as I got older to focus on school. But I still missed it. And when I discovered pole, I was like, oh, this is kind of a mix between, was kind of like sexy gymnastics, really. And I loved it. So I immediately wanted to sign up. And I don't even think that my sister and our friend wanted to sign up at that point. But I was like, come on, girls, let's do this. And yeah, I guess I never really looked back. I was crazy about it ever since. And still to this day, when I'm teaching beginners at my studio, there are some who at the end of the first class, I can see that their eyes are shining and they're kind of a little bit breathless and they're super excited. And I'm like, I see you. I see what's happened to you. Because that's what happened to me.
I remember that feeling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, when you were you had a career at the time, and how did that transition happen? Because obviously pole is your career now, so how did that work for you?
Yeah, it was pretty funny because I was working as a corporate lawyer, and when I started doing pole, it literally never, ever occurred to me that it would one day be even a part-time job, let alone my career. I always thought that because when I first started pole, I'd just come back from the Netherlands. I'd been doing an internship at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in the Office of the Prosecutor, and that's a United Nations international criminal court. And I'd sort of thought that that's what I wanted to do, that I wanted to do international law. But I came back to Australia because my mum got sick and a variety of other reasons. And I came back and started working at the law firm where I'd done my summer clerkship, which is like an internship here in Australia. And I kind of knew that it wasn't really for me, but it was a very top tier, sort of very good firm. And everyone said it's a great place to start your career. And I guess I kind of just bowed to the pressure, I guess, of doing what people expect you to do. You know, I'd done my law degree and I didn't really want to work in corporate law, but everyone said it's a great place to start and then you can branch out and do other things. And I thought, all right, I'll do this. So I started working at the law firm and I really didn't enjoy it at all. When I was working in the corporate sector, I found it quite soul destroying and very dry. And I just felt that it was sucking the life out of me. And then for a little while, I got to work in the pro bono team, which is the area of law where they do work for disadvantaged individuals for free. And I really liked that. And I had some great opportunities working there. But eventually I had to go back to the corporate side again. And I hated it. I was miserable. But I was still pole dancing. And to begin with, I was just doing it once a week because back then it didn't even occur to me that if I did it more than once a week, I would get better faster. It really was just like a once a week fun activity. I didn't take it seriously. I really liked it, but it was just a once a week thing. And then gradually I started doing more classes a week and then going in for practice time on my lunch breaks. And, you know, I'd race through the city in my suit to get to the other end. I started off at Bobby's to get to the studio on my lunch break. And I would only ever have like 40 minutes out of the hour because then I had to get back to work. And I used to lie to my boss and say I was going to yoga. And so I was sort of doing it like 3 or 4 times a week. And it was my salvation because I was so bored and miserable in the office that going to pole was just like my little secret and my outlet, I suppose. In such a dry and boring world as the corporate law world is, pole was, my salvation. And then one day I went to watch Miss Pole Dance Australia and I was sitting there. And that year, the year that I went to watch it, there were some really amazing performers, but there were also some performers who really weren't, like I thought I was better at that point. And, you know, I thought, I watched the girls who won and I was like, they're amazing. And the other girls who didn't place, I was like, well, I think they're amazing too, but I think that I could, in terms of my skill level, I think that I'm kind of on the same level, so maybe I could one day be on stage at Miss Pole Dance Australia. And then immediately the next thought that followed was, no, that's not possible because imagine if anyone from work found out. And so I quickly put that idea to bed and I just thought, no, it's not possible for me to ever even entertain the thought of entering Miss Pole Dance Australia because if anyone found out at work, it would be such a scandal and I couldn't go to client meetings knowing that maybe they'd seen me on stage in my underwear. And so I sort of thought that's not possible. And then, but it kind of just like, I suppose, festered in my mind a little bit, this idea. And it bugged me thinking, why am I not doing something that I would love to do in order to pursue doing something that I hate doing? And it didn't make any sense to me that I loved pole so much and it would just be a dream come true to get up on stage at Miss Pole Dance Australia, but I was going to not do that so in case it affected this job that I hated. And it didn't make any sense to me. And I kind of just thought about that for a while. And then I had a job, I had like an internal assessment at work, a review. And I'd been working really long hours till 11 o'clock at night and weekends and everything. And the partner who I was talking to, she said to me, look, you know, we really like you, but we sort of think that maybe your casual and relaxed attitude gives off the impression that you're not 110% committed to working at the firm. And it really floored me because I'd been working, like I said, long hours, working weekends. Everyone else my age had gone to work in London or New York, and I was still in Sydney. And I remember thinking, like, what do you guys want from me? Like my actual blood. and then I thought, you know what? It's actually, she's right. I'm not 110% committed to working here. I need to get out. And my best friend at the time, I was talking to her about it and she said, why don't you open a pole studio? You love it so much. And I was like, you're crazy. You know, I'm a lawyer. Like I've done a law degree. I'm not going to open a pole studio. You're crazy. And she was like, but you love it. And I said, nah. You're crazy. And then again, all those ideas that were kind of in the back of my mind and just simmering there, when I had this performance review at work and they questioned my commitment to working there, I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to quit law and be a pole dancer. what I did.
Sometimes you just get to such a miserable point in your life. You're like, the decision was made for me. Like, I can't keep going
That's
this
right.
direction.
That's right. And I often think that if I hadn't have been so very unhappy at my job, then I wouldn't have had the courage to do what I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't sort of just quit law immediately and go straight into opening the studio. Because I still didn't think of it as a viable career because it was still very early days for the pole world.
Was this like a couple years into it at this point?
This was 3 years into it.
3 years, okay.
Yeah. So I quit my job at the corporate law firm and I got a job working at a community legal centre, which is more like pro bono type work. Like I got paid, but the clients didn't pay. It was a government-funded service. And I really loved working there. And I opened the studios. Well, first of all, one studio with my sister, Maddie. And it was insane. I look back on it and I just think I must have been crazy, but I was crazy. I was completely crazy about pole and I was really passionate about building up the studio. So I was working 35-hour weeks because it's government-funded body, they limit them. It's a very clear-cut. It wasn't like the law firm where I worked previously.
Very different.
It's very different. So I knew every day what time I would finish work. So I would work like a full day at the office and then I would go to the studio and teach 2 or 3 classes a night. And then on the weekends we'd do admin or we'd do studio promotion. And I was basically working 2 full-time jobs 7 days a week. And then I did that for something like 2 or 3 years.
And this was at your studio at Pole Dance Academy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at the Pole Dance Academy until I started to cut down my hours at the new law firm that I was working at. Sorry, my dog's got a squeaky toy.
That's not Michelle, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah, that's not me playing with the squeaky toy. I cut my hours down eventually as the studio started to get busier. But like the crazy thing for me now is to look back on it and see like how hard we worked. I think that if someone had said to me, when you open your own business, this is how hard you'll work and you also won't pay yourself a salary for, I think it was 2 years. Wow. Maybe I wouldn't have done it, but no regrets at all. But it definitely was a lot of hard work.
Wow.
To set it up.
Yeah. And so, for those who don't know, that Michelle's sister is Maddie Sparkle. And so did she kind of like convince you to do the studio? Was she like a deciding?
No.
You had to convince her?
No, this is the funny thing. Maddie had started doing pole with me at the same time. But then she got this boyfriend who lived in Miami and she basically was back and forth. She was living over there a little bit, coming back. And it was she was sort of a bit lost and lacking direction. And she did a diploma in fashion design or something like that, but didn't want to work as a fashion designer in the fashion world. So she didn't know what she was doing. And she'd stopped pole dancing. Oh. And I was crazy about pole. And I said to her, look, let's do this. And I think she said to me, since we opened, that at the time she thought that I'd lost my mind a little bit, but that it could be a good business opportunity. And in her mind, I would just be the obsessive pole dancer who would teach all the advanced classes and she would be the admin kind of brains behind the operation. And that was her view of it. She knew she would teach some beginners classes, but she didn't have any big pole dancing goals at that point. So it wasn't
like the sisters were like united from beginning to going through this journey together?
Well, we were united in the sense that, but I just think that her view of her role was that she would be more of an admin type behind the scenes person. Also because Maddie, no one believes us when we say this, but she was not flexible when we started. She couldn't touch her toes.
Wow.
When we were going through some stretches that we wanted to teach in our flexibility class, I said, all right, well, let's do this one, where you sit in a straddle and you sit up tall and lean forward. When she was sitting in her straddle, she couldn't sit up straight. She was back like this. And I remember looking at her.
All of us.
Yeah, there really is. Because I said to her, I was like, Maddie, you've really got to work on your flexibility if you want to teach flexibility. And she was like, I know. But she was very dedicated, obviously, and she's worked super hard. But it's just funny because to start with, she thought I was the crazy pole dancer. And as we've grown, you know, she's incredible. She's amazing now. She's so flexible. She's so strong. She's so talented. And I've sort of watched the whole thing happen, and it didn't happen right away. Like, it happened over years and years and years and years. So
See,
just shows
that's
dedication.
good. Yeah, sometimes we think, oh, it just comes natural to people if they're that good. But truth is, work your ass off, you know?
That's right. Absolutely nothing came naturally to me and Maddie.
Wow, that's good to know. I mean,
Yeah.
and very surprising, but cool. And so what was you, so your studio's been around for a while though. What is, you know, I've had only a couple Australians on. What was the reception in Australia? Because I know that Bobby's was kind of established at that time, but do you feel like in Australia you had a different reception, or do you think there's a different perception now, or do you feel like it's still on par with the rest of the world?
Well, so when we first opened, we had one studio, and it grew. So now we have 3. So yeah, it's definitely, it grew a lot over the past 10 years or 11, how many years it's been going in Australia. I'd say probably about 15 years. It's grown a lot, and it's still growing. And I think in Australia, maybe more so in Sydney than in other parts of the country, but we're a beach culture. So we're used to walking around in our bikinis.
There you go.
So there wasn't that kind of shock and horror. We're a very outdoor kind of culture. But definitely when I first started doing pole, people thought it was very, you know, they had ideas about it. And now when I say that I'm a pole instructor, people are like, oh, cool, you know, I think that's going to be in the Olympics. And it's funny because my style obviously is very sexy. Like, I love the sensual side of pole. Yeah. And people will say to me, oh, you know, pole dancing, a lot of people think that it just belongs in strip clubs and that it's just all about sexy dancing, but it's not. It's so much more. It's about sport and athleticism. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is those things, but not the way I do it. So I'm kind of now trying to fight the new prejudice about pole dancing, which is that it shouldn't be sexy, because I love the sexy side of it. But I think that's the beautiful thing about pole, is that it can be whatever you want it to be. You know, it can be contemporary kind of, you know, very lyrical or contemporary style, or it can be a sport like gymnastics, or it can be wild and crazy and fun like Dance Filthy, or it can be highly artistic like pole art. You know, I think there's so much in there, and you just choose your own adventure.
Yeah, the pup agrees.
Yeah, he agrees.
Yeah, and so speaking of, you just mentioned a bunch of competitions. You and your sister started your own competitions. You started pole theater and Dance Filthy, speaking of the sexy, sensual side. So, like, what inspired you to do that?
Well, the funny thing is that Dance Filthy was never supposed to be a big thing at all. Like, it was just a little side project that we were working on. We thought that it would be fun to just – it was about the time when you know, a couple of years back, everyone was all about trying to get the sexy out of pole and trying to make it very sport-like and get it accepted by the mainstream. And we were sitting over here in Australia like, well, that's great, but, you know, we love the sexy side and we miss that. And there's no competition opportunities that really celebrate purely just the showmanship aspect of the sexy side of pole. And we'd already kind of created pole theatre. And the purpose of pole theatre was to – we were noticing that there were so many different performance styles, and trying to compare them was a bit like apples and oranges, because every year when we went to Miss Pole Dance Australia, you know, we'd see like Carly Hunter doing her very, very funny and outrageous routines. And then you'd have Amber Ray doing really beautiful lyrical performances, and then someone doing a very sexy type show. And you look at them and think they're all amazing, but how do you compare them? Like,
True.
You just can't. So I'd been toying with the idea, I think for like maybe 2 years before we actually did it. Pole theatre, the concept behind it was to create a competition where there were different categories, so people were competing against their own style, and you weren't comparing apples and oranges, basically. And we included pole art, pole drama, pole comedy, and pole classique, because we wanted to show that in our view, they were all art forms. Each style is an art form. And there's no in pole theatre in the competition, there's no hierarchy. So somebody who fulfills all the criteria in pole comedy is just as likely to will win over somebody who creates a very beautiful performance but doesn't fulfill the criteria properly in pole art. Same with pole classique. So we wanted to create a big competition, like a national competition in Australia, that elevated classique, which is the sexy
I was just
side,
going to
and
say, if people aren't familiar with classique, it's like...
It basically, to satisfy the elements, the criteria in classique, you have to remove an item of clothing in a way that sort of nods to the traditions of striptease. It can't just be like you take off the hat. You have to take something off. You can go down to G-string and pasties. It varies country to country depending on the legalities. So you can strip all the way down, or you could literally just take off a hat, or just take off, I don't know, like a jacket or something like that. But when you take it off, it has to be a part of the performance. Okay. And you have to wear shoes, and the dance style has to be in keeping with sensual or sexy pole style floor work. Yeah. Okay. So it can be any style really of sexy pole dancing, but it's supposed to elevate, or not elevate, in my mind it is there anyway, but to keep on stage in a big competition sexy pole, that it doesn't get kind of shunted to the back of like little competitions, amateur competitions here and there, but to keep it on like the national and now international scale. Yeah, so that was the idea behind pole theatre, and also that we wanted to keep the showmanship or the showwomanship in pole, that it was supposed to, the thing that we love about it, Maddie and I, is the performance side as well as the tricks, because obviously some of the tricks people doing now are completely insane and amazing. But we like to see those tricks combined with a performance, like an actual show that people would go to see. And, that's something that I love about pole theatre, is it's the most entertaining competition I've ever been to. You laugh, you cry, you're wowed, you're thrilled. It takes you on such a roller coaster of emotions. And because I usually MC it, sometimes it's happened that, particularly after pole drama, like I'll be crying because some of the pieces are so powerful, and then I have to step back out on stage and like pull myself together. But it's great. It's wonderful to see everybody bringing their life experiences to their performances, and it's pretty amazing.
And validating all different styles too.
And bringing them all together on the one stage as well. That's what I love to see. It's funny when you're backstage at pole theatre, because like backstage is just hilarious, because you've got your classic girls and they're all like glammed up to the max, and they've got their heels on, their costumes are sparkling and tiny and they look absolutely beautiful. Then you've got your pole comedy people and their costumes are just hilarious, and then you've got like the pole art and the pole drama. Like, it's just backstage is an absolute circus. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Love it.
Yeah. And then, so after that, I just want to acknowledge, how many countries is that in now?
I have to do a count, because there's a couple of countries that haven't been announced yet, but that are in the process of getting their application, their pole theatre together. But we're in it's 15 or more countries at the moment. And last year we had the first world final, which was in Prague in October, and that was spectacular.
That's major, and you go to all of them?
Not all of them. I go to last year was just a lot of travel for me. This year I'm trying to not travel as much, because it's very difficult to be on the road constantly, especially when you live in Australia. Nowhere is close.
You're not in Europe and you're just taking the train to another country.
That's right. Yeah. So I've been to the UK one every year, but this year I'm not going to go. We've got Chili Rocks from Australia. She's going to MC, and I think they're going to love her because she's amazing. And I go to the US one every year, and I'll be going to that one this year. And I'm going to Pole Theatre Brazil this year, but I'm not really sure. I'm trying to, be at home a little bit more.
What would you say, like, the percentage of time you spend on the road?
Last year, I think it was I would have been away at least 6 months of the year, but maybe more. I was away a lot.
So at least 50% of your time, which is hard when you own your own studio too. And
it's hard for the business, and it's like tough on my personal life. It's difficult to maintain non-pole friends. And so
Yeah, no, completely
kind of,
understandable. We talk about that a lot on the podcast with people who it's like this necessary evil starting off, but a lot of people are aiming of tightening that up a little bit just for their own sanity.
yeah, just trying to reestablish a bit of balance this year. But I say it every single year, and every year ends up the calendar just fills up. So who knows?
Yeah, well, that's it's very nice to know that you want it all over the world.
Yeah,
isn't
it is. It's amazing. And, sometimes I think that I'm crazy to turn down, offers of come to this country and do this and do that. But I was just getting very, very exhausted last year. And I think when you're exhausted, you can't give your best. And I would hate to go somewhere and not give 100% of myself. But, you need time to recharge in between as well. So.
Yeah, totally understandable. And so we've established that you are a big fan of like the sexy style of pole and the classique style. And you have, I think, had to deal with, because you're also obviously very well known for what you do. So you've had to deal with a lot of criticism from people like judging you as, I'm sure you've heard all of the words like from you're a whore, or slut, or a stripper, and you've come out and had some really powerful statements about how you feel that pole dancing is like integrally tied with being a feminist, and that it has like served your life so well. So can we talk about that, like especially like your feminist views, because I think it's so smart, and I think people would love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always considered myself to be a feminist, and I've never, I mean, there have been a few circumstances where I know it can be difficult for women to self-identify as a feminist, because immediately you do get a backlash, especially online. It's crazy. You just have to mention the word feminism, and all of a sudden all these strange people appear that you've never heard of before that are ready to fight you to the death on the topic.
Right.
But look, I don't think that pole dancing is integrally tied to feminism per se, but for me it is. And I think that
experience,
yeah, I think that that feminism can manifest in lots of different ways. It's if you believe in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes, then you're a feminist. So it's a pretty simple definition. Mm-hmm. But obviously it gets complicated and a lot gets tied up into it. For me, I guess I really struggled with understanding how my feminism could sit comfortably with pole dancing for a while, because I always considered myself to be a feminist. And then I started doing pole dancing, and I was like, I love this so much, and it's doing things for me on not just physical levels but emotional, and it really changed the way that I looked at myself, the world, and my body. And I was like, how is something like pole dancing doing all of these things for me? I don't really understand, especially when people keep telling me that pole dancing and stripping and all of the things that it's tied up with is oppressive towards women. So how can it be oppressive towards women when I'm finding it so incredibly empowering and liberating? And I thought about it a lot, and I actually wrote a blog on, I think I called it Being a Feminist and a Pole Dancer or something like that. It's on my blog.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes so people can check that out.
Okay, cool. I wrote it a long time ago, and it was sort of the culmination of my ruminations, I suppose, on the topic. And I guess for me and my version of feminism is that I think that one of the big problems we have as a society is the way that we shame women for being sexual creatures, and we shame women about their sexuality and about their bodies. And I think that it's a really limiting thing for women, because it means that they end up hating their bodies. They end up distrusting their bodies. They feel guilty for natural feelings and urges and whatnot, but they also feel guilty for the way that the world responds to their bodies. And I remember watching Sheila Kelly from S Factor. She did a TED talk a while ago about pole dancing and the erotic creature and feminism and female and sexual empowerment. And I just watched it, and I thought so much of what she said really rang true for me. And I think if people listening haven't watched the TED talk,
everyone should watch that. I'll put that link in the show notes too. Yeah.
Yeah. it's just such an incredible talk where she talks about if we were able to harness the power and the energy of female sexuality rather than shaming women for it, that we could do great things. And she talks about the first offense, the first time that you're made to realize as a woman or as a young girl that there's something wrong with your body because of the way other people perceive it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so true. And I could remember the first time it happened to me. But anyway, I guess like my view on pole dancing and feminism is that I don't think that there's anything wrong with an adult woman giving full consent to expressing female sexuality on stage. I think that that's a beautiful thing and I love it. I don't think that women should be shamed for doing that. And I think actually if you're the person who looks at a woman doing that on stage and you can't deal with it or you can't see any other way to look at her other than as an object, then you're the one with the problem. You're the one who needs to assess your behavior and what's going on in your mind rather than trying to change her and what she's doing. So that was kind of how I reconciled with myself this whole objectification of women thing. That women don't objectify themselves, other people objectify them. So if you're the one objectifying women, you need to look at yourself. You don't need to try and control the behavior of the woman. You need to look at yourself and understand what issues you've got going on. But it is a very complex thing because a lot of the time, and I guess this ties into my Miss Pole Dance performance, a lot of the time the ones who are criticizing women are other women. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're trapped in this kind of body shaming, disgust at female sexuality and inability to understand how any woman could do such a thing and still call herself a self-respecting, upstanding member of society. But yeah, I've been called all kinds of things online. Yeah. And at first, it's a funny thing because the first time it happens, you're like, oh God, am I that? am I a slut? And also, and in my mind at the same time, like, a slut is a woman who enjoys having sex with different people. And like, God, I guess I am.
Are they trying to offend me? What's happening here? Yeah.
Yeah, like, what's going on? I don't understand. But yeah, getting called names, the first time it happens, it really shell shocks you because you're like, God, this person doesn't even know me and they already hate me. But then you start to build a bit of a thicker skin and you get used to it, I guess. Like sometimes, a lot of the time when I get a negative comment on any of my social media channels, I'll delete it right away because I'm like, that's disgusting. Yeah. But a lot of the time I don't delete it because I'm like, well, all right, buddy, you can post that on my page and I'm just going to sit back and let my followers.
Yes, and like throw you to the tigers, like, Rawr.
Yeah, because they will. And I love that. Like, sometimes it's really funny because some guy will come on and make some really disgusting comment, and I'm just like, all right, well, let's see how that works out for you.
Look at your watch. How long is this going to take?
And yeah, and so sometimes I have to step in when things get a bit out of hand and be like, thanks, guys, but you need to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, well, they're defending your honor. That's so cool. And the performance that you referenced earlier, which I want to definitely talk about, was your Miss Pole Dance Australia. Obviously, you don't compete anymore, right? You're just kind of guest performancing places.
No, I was competing that year. I don't really compete. I mean, for me, Miss Pole Dance is not really. When I compete, I don't really compete because I've got so much going on with like the studios and the competitions that I can't train the way that you need to train to compete and to hope and to win. But I love performing and I love, when I get excited about a performance that I have in mind, I'm like, great, where can I do this?
You treat competitions like performances, essentially.
Yeah, I do. And I've never really been massively competitive. I'm more sort of like, and I think that I have not ever won a singles competition. I've won doubles with my dance partner Matty, not my sister, a guy. Okay. But in singles, I've won like a couple of dodgy pub competitions, but I've placed a few times. But for me, it's more about I just like getting on stage and doing my thing my way. A lot of people I guess, used to get annoyed about that or laugh at me a little bit, like, you know, you're never going to win unless you do this or do that. And I was just like, well, this is how I like to do it. And I think that because I've stayed true to my style and everything over the years, that I guess the people who follow me like that and relate to it. And I guess, you know, it is what it is. Like I haven't, like I said, I haven't won anything, but it hasn't really held me back, and it doesn't bother me because what I love is getting up on stage and saying my thing. Or
yeah, that's so interesting because I think many people would think, oh yeah, like Shimmy, she's won so much, like, because we love watching you and we like love, you know, seeing all your videos, and we just assume, oh, she's like world champion all over. But this is like such a positive message that go out and dance as you want, and you can still be very successful as a dancer. Maybe the titles don't mean as much as maybe they used to, where they would allow you. I think early on, like, you needed those titles to tour and to get, you know, jobs.
Definitely.
But, you know, being true to yourself and being authentic is, I think, making people more authentic, or excuse me, more successful.
And working hard as well. That's the thing. Like when I started touring, I hadn't won anything at all, I don't think, or even placed in anything significant. And I just put together, like, you know, some YouTube videos of like different tricks and stuff that I was working on. And I just contacted a lot of studios around the world and introduced myself and said, you know, I'd love to come and do some workshops in your area. And you just have to be really humble and be prepared to work hard, and be prepared that you might show up and your workshop might only have 4 people in it. But if you do a really good job, then next time when you come back, maybe there'll be 8 people. Like, it takes a while to build it. And also you have to continually put stuff out there and let people know what's going on and what you're doing, because it's not enough to say I won this competition, everyone come to my workshops. You have to let people understand your style and why they should come and learn from you, because, you know, workshops are expensive.
Yes, they are, and there's a lot of people that give workshops. So you know, you kind of want to relate to beyond their skills, but also like maybe their personalities and your viewpoints, and you know that other maybe unspoken thing that you bring to a workshop.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the girls who come to my workshops, you know, have come every year or whatever, and some of them have been following me for a long time, and they're like friends now. I show up and I'm like, oh, hey man, you know, how's this been going? And, you know, you were injured and whatnot. Like, you know, I feel like I know them now, and it's nice. I like touring. It's very tiring, but I like it. Yeah.
So like, you know, it's funny, when I was planning out this interview, I was like, I can't cover everything she's done in like an hour. This is so hard, like, because you teach, you tour, you have your own studio, you run 2 competitions, and you also perform. And so...
and our summer camp. We do the Pole Dance Academy summer camp too.
Summer camp.
Which starts tomorrow. I'm like freaking out because it's 100 workshops over 7 days. It's insane.
Oh my gosh. And that's in I feel...
in Sydney.
It's in Sydney. How do you say it? Bondi? Bondi Beach?
Bondi Beach.
Bondi Beach. Okay. Yeah. I always just see people pulling on Bondi Beach, and I'm like, I want to go there.
That's so nice. That's where I am right now, in Bondi Beach.
Oh, yeah. So people, if they go to the pole summer camp, then they can go visit the pole beach.
The Bondi Pole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of arriving at the moment. I'm seeing on Facebook people like tagging me that they just arrived in Sydney. So yeah, it's really fun. It's 7 days of people come from the US, they come from Europe, Asia, from South America, everywhere. It's great. It's lots of fun. It's really cheap too, our camp.
Oh, good to know. Well, how did that did it start? How did you start doing that?
We started really small. We just ran like a little 7-day intensive thing. And then, it just grew. It's just like everything that we've done has not been accidental, but we started small with everything, and then we do a good job of it and we try really hard, and then it just grows. And that's kind of been the case with everything, like pole theatre and dance field theatre. We didn't really intend for those to go global at all. I never even put out a call saying, if you want to host a pole theatre, contact me. People just started contacting me. Yeah, and I think pole theatre really responded to a feeling in the pole world that we're not all capable of being rhythmic gymnasts on the pole. Mm-hmm. So people were like, God, where do I fit in the pole world? And pole theatre gave a chance to some amazing pole dancers and pole performers who wouldn't be able to compete at the fitness comps, the pole fitness comps. It gave them a chance to get on stage and, you know, do some incredible performances.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the performances I've seen over the years, I'm like, God, it's amazing it's such an incredible feeling to know that you've created a platform for these incredible performers to do their thing on stage that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise because there was no other forum for them to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like you, whether you consciously do it or not, you have this like greater love of the community itself. Like
I really do, yeah.
Just like you being, you know, who you are and being like just concerned with your own dancing.
Yeah, I definitely, I love the pole industry and I want it to grow and I want to see it get bigger. I want more people to get involved. Like it drives me nuts that there are some, you know, I see some incredible pole athletes, pole dancers, pole performers who, if we were men in a male-dominated, you know, if we were skateboarders or if we were snowboarders, you know, they'd be raking in sponsorship dollars, all that kind of thing. And I hope that pole dancing goes that way. It's still early days, so maybe it will. Yeah. But I would really love to see the industry grow and to see the incredible athletes that we have be rewarded for their insane talent. And I would love to be a part of building the industry to get it to a point where we can, reward people.
Yeah, like we know, you know, the industry wouldn't be what it is without you. And in fact, the reason why I asked about your pole camp before is because I remember previously on the podcast, I believe I was interviewing Shane Evans, and she was saying that you and your sister really jumped in. There was supposed to be a big conference in Australia, and at the last minute where people were already flying over, the conference was canceled, and that you and your sister really jumped in and created something for these people to go to.
Yeah, the funny thing with that year was we'd already been running our pole camp every year. I think that was the third year that we're going into, I think, our sixth year of it this year.
Cool.
Or our fifth, I can't remember. But we'd already been doing it for a couple of years, and then Sabrina Waller announced that her camp, which had previously been in Western Australia, so the other side of Australia, that she was moving it to Sydney. And we were like, okay, great. And she wanted to run it, I think, 2 weeks or 1 week after ours. And we were like, okay, awesome. And we considered at the time, it's not the first time or the last time that that's happened to us, where people have moved very similar events to the same location within a couple of weeks of our events. And it's very frustrating, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't want to fight, and we can't, you know, we believe in our service and our products, and we just stand by it and we let, you know, see what happens. And I guess in one way, you know, what happened really affirmed that it's better to go with the name at a well-established kind of camp than a fly-by-night kind of operation like that. But I would have preferred that it didn't work out that way, because it was pretty awful for all of the instructors and all of the students who'd come. But yeah, we stepped in and we basically ran the camp at our studios, and we worked with Amber Ray and Andrea Rife as well, who've got studios nearby, and they offered their studio spaces as well. But we literally just finished our own 7-day camp. And then we had to do it again. And I was like, God, I'm so tired. So we ran the whole camp again. But the whole thing was so incredibly dodgy, because they sent out the email saying we have to cancel the camp. And I emailed the guy and I was like, look, Gary, you can't do this. Everyone's flown here. And some of them were still on the plane. They hadn't even landed yet. So they were going to land and then get the email that the camp had been cancelled. And I said to him, look, just send me the schedules and the timetables and the instructor agreements. Transfer me the money that you've collected, and I'll take it over. Like, I'll run it and I'll pay everybody, and we'll just do that. And he said no. He said that wasn't possible for various spurious reasons that had no basis in anything at all. He was like, oh, insurance, blah, 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 legalities, blah, blah, blah. And I was
I'm a lawyer, okay?
Buddy,
don't try to pull this.
That's right. So I knew at that point that something really dodgy was going on, and I suspected they just didn't have the money, and then next minute they flee the country and whatnot. So it was pretty dramatic. It was pretty crazy, but we were able to run it, and unfortunately some of the students had to we ran it cheap. So I think we had we put on the extra workshops for $35 each.
Nice.
So they weren't too badly out of pocket, and the instructors still managed to get, some of them had already managed to get a bit of their money from the wallers up front, but a lot of them hadn't. So, you know, it worked out in the end. It wasn't ideal, but it was really the best that we could do in the circumstances.
Yeah.
But I'm always just like, guys, just come to our camp. Come to our camp. Like, not only do we run our own camps reliably every year, but we run other people's camps reliably as well.
Yeah, that's amazing that you did that. I mean, there's so much popping up with pole these days, and, you know, people starting competitions and studios and camps and all of that. And that's amazing and awesome. And like you said before, we want it to grow. But, you know, it's nice to know that we're in a community that if something fucked up like that happens, that, like, we have people that love this community so much that's like, what can I do to make this as least awful for the people involved that are getting fucked over right now, essentially? That's super rad.
Yeah. It was crazy, though. I mean, people were calling up the hotel asking where their bookings were, and no bookings had been made or anything. So it was very...
shady. You know, it happens, I guess, in all industries. It's bound to happen in pole. Hopefully that was the instance.
Hopefully that kind of thing won't happen again.
So let's jump into the second part of the interview with the standard questions I ask everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So question number 1, who is Michelle Shimmy's pole crush?
Well, I guess like my original continuing ongoing pole crush would be Alethea Austin. Like I think Alethea is amazing, and she really pioneered sexy pole, and I just used to watch her videos over and over and over again. And even now when I have new students who I can tell are really into it and I want to give them like a little history lesson, I sit them down and I pull out her videos, and Felix Kane as well, that first Miss Pole performance that she did. I still watch that and get goosebumps. I think they're amazing. But also my sister Maddie, like, she's so inspiring to me because she works so hard, and everything that she has achieved, she's worked for like insanely hard, and she's a big motivator for me. I'm just getting lazier and lazier as I get older in terms of training, but I watch.
No. I mean, what are you going to do? Train and be like the top of your physical game your entire life? Like, our bodies
I'm in the
have
off
limitations
season at the moment.
It's not like you don't have other things on your plate. It's nice to be able to focus on different things.
Yeah.
I don't think we could use the word lazy to describe you.
Maybe not lazy, but yeah, I look back on how much I used to train like a crazy woman, but now I've got more of I had a bit of a bad injury a few years back, and it made me reassess how I train, and I was like, I want to be in this for the long run. I don't want to kind of just burn bright and then like burn out completely. So I pace myself a bit more now.
Smart. That is advice that like every expert polar who's been on this podcast has said. So like, hopefully it's registering with the rest of us. Like, don't put yourself out of the game earlier than you need to be.
Yeah.
And so how would you like to see the pole community evolve over the next 5 years?
I would love to see all the different types of pole grow. Okay. So I would love to see pole in the Olympics. I think that would do a lot for the sport. But I would also like to see the dance and performance styles grow. I would love to, as I say, see the industry get a bit more professionalized in terms of how we operate, but also in terms of, sponsorship deals for our top performers or athletes. And I would love to, I just think that would be a great thing to happen, because I don't see a big difference in terms of, it's definitely a subculture type activity, pole dancing. And I think Jack Gaffney of Bad Kitty we talked about this a lot, and he said that he sees pole dancing like skateboarding or like surfing, that it's a culture. And I would love to see pole dancers rewarded the way that skateboarders and snowboarders and whatnot, and surfers. I think that it'd be a real shame if we didn't go that way, because we've got some incredible athletes, and the feminist in me wants to see female-dominated sports be rewarded the way that male-dominated sports were. In fact, a few years back, I contacted Red Bull about sponsoring an event or something, and they said, oh, look, it's not really in line with what we do. And I was like, well, pole's an extreme sport, and you do sponsor a lot of extreme sports, and you do sponsor female athletes, but they're all in male-dominated extreme sports. So it would be a great opportunity for you guys to maybe think about putting something that is a female-dominated extreme sport on your books. But they didn't buy my argument, but maybe they'll come back to me at some point.
That's interesting, because we've talked about that before, like, that pole should be in the X Games, like, for sure, and that they're one of the sponsors people always bring up is like, yeah, like Red Bull. Like, in fact, Mina from Bad Kitty used to work at Red Bull. And so I was like, well, have you ever gone back and talked to anyone about getting sponsors? So it's interesting to know that you have, like, proactively reached out. And we talked with Alethea about getting, when she was on the podcast, that, like, competition should be sponsored also by, like, Jack Daniels or, you know, like, outside the pole industry companies.
Yeah, I think once we sort of reach that critical mass of the number of people who are doing pole, like, we are still small. I think as it gets bigger, it will professionalize, and it will become, hopefully we will start to attract those sponsorship dollars, but it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's
keep
difficult
reaching out, but that's cool that you're, like, proactively doing it. You're doing, like, you know, keep knocking on those doors. And
yeah, that's the thing. You've just got to keep harassing people and aim high. And also the other thing as well is, I think for a long time we were very apologetic about our sport, our art, our whatever you want to call it. We were very apologetic about it, and we were like, oh, you know, we know it's a little bit weird, a little bit fringe, but now I'm like, no, we're awesome, and you should be paying attention to us. And I think that we really need to kind of not be braver, but just be more assertive about the fact that we are awesome, and that we are as good and as valuable as any other kind of fringe type sport, like skateboarding or snowboarding. And just stop allowing people to not take us seriously. I take us seriously.
And like you said before, not like feeling like you have to strip that sexy part out to validate it to outsiders. Like, there's got to be a way.
The more time you spend trying to make what you're doing more appealing to the mainstream, like trying to sort of bow to the pressure of the general public to make it more palatable to them, the more it seems like you're apologizing for what you do, and you're trying to sort of sanitize it or clean it up. Like, I'm all for just being bold and unapologetic and saying this is who we are and this is what we do, and pay attention.
Yes, 100%. And so those are all very good goals. I really hope in 5 years we've achieved all of that and more. And so we talked about a lot of things you have coming up. Is there anything we didn't mention? And the one thing I wanted to bring up was your, what's it called? Shimmy.
Oh, the Shimmy and Sparkle range?
Yes.
That's we launched that at Pole Expo. That's our pole wear line. It's pole wear, but you can also wear it as like an active wear kind of swimsuit thing if you like going to the beach and doing handstands like I do. So we launched that at Pole Expo, and we had an awesome reception. We were kind of like mobbed on the first day. We moved so much stock, and it was really stressful.
That's
but
a good problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some more designs coming out in the next couple of months, and it's great. Like, I really love it, because I remember, you know, going to sort of Target and Kmart and trying to find shorts, like little underpants because I don't like wearing shorts to pole in. I like wearing really, really skimpy little pants. And I used to go and look at those shops to try and find some underpants that would be suitable, and nothing really had the right crotch width. So now it's awesome that we just go in and we're like, this is what we want, and they produce it for us. And we've had a really good reception so far. Like, it's sold well.
That's crazy. So you own your own pole studio. You run camps and competitions and shows. You perform, and you also have a pole wear / activewear line. Pretty incredible. Yeah. And you also have some
busy.
And you have another thing I just remembered is on your site. It's called Eat, Move, and Shimmy, and it's like your nutritional, like you help people with nutrition and movement as like a non-professional nutritionist.
So I work. Yeah, the reason I did that was because people used to message me all the time and say, like, as a pole dancer, do you follow a certain eating plan or diet? And I wanted to have something to send them, to say to them. So I worked with a nutritionist to put the plan together. It's like a meal plan, but it's also like a little booklet where I talk about my own approach to food and body image and all of that kind of thing, because it hasn't always been good for me. Like, I definitely had eating disorder issues when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. And I only really managed to get past it when I discovered pole, because, and this kind of ties into what we're talking about before, but I grew up definitely feeling a lot of shame and disgust and self-loathing about my body, and suspicion as well that every time I ate something that my body was going to just like balloon out and I would be this disgusting creature that no one could love. And, it's so easy to laugh about it, but that's how a lot of...
That's how society kind of trains a lot of us. It's hard to avoid that.
And I saw my body and food as the enemy, and I used to really control what I ate. And it was just a very miserable time because I was obsessed with food. It was an obsession, and I couldn't think about anything else. And I just think about all that wasted energy, what I could have been directing towards something productive and doing awesome things. But instead I was punishing myself every single day about what I ate and what I didn't eat and all of that kind of thing. And when I discovered pole, it made me stop seeing my body as the enemy, and I began to see it instead as this incredible tool that would do amazing things if I treated it right and if I trained it and if I ate the right things. And I stopped looking at my body. I stopped seeing my body like, as an outsider looking at it, like judging it. And I began to live in my body and to love it and to love the things that it could do. And it just changed my whole mindset towards food and my body. So I write about that in the booklet as well. It's not a diet. It's just my approach to food and the way that I eat. I try to stay away from like processed foods and all of that kind of thing. But, I'm not perfect. I still do eat junk food sometimes. But I don't hate myself afterwards for doing it. Because, like I said, I just think it's really sad that so many girls and women are spending such a massive proportion of their lives angsting and worrying about what they've eaten and what they haven't eaten, rather than understanding that their body is an incredibly powerful and extraordinary machine that can do amazing things for them. It's not something to be hated. It's something to be loved and to be proud of.
Yeah, so I'll put the link to that. I'm putting a link to everything in the show notes so people can just stalk everything. And I'm also putting a link to the show notes that we didn't get to go deeper into it, but the Miss Pole Dance Australia routine that you did with the social media comments. And
that will go online in a couple of weeks as well, so I'll send you the link when that's up. But it was funny though, because that show was all about all of the hateful comments that I'd got on social media. And some of them I quoted word for word in my performance, but making fun of them and laughing. And the funny thing was, like, right after that performance, somebody sent me a thread to a conversation where a girl had been saying that she'd really enjoyed my performance and thought I had a great message about not bullying online and about not slut shaming, but that her friends who she'd been watching the show with had called me a filthy crotch-grabbing slut. And I was just like, well, I guess the irony of them slut-shaming me after my slut-shaming show kind of was lost on them, but at least they've given me more material for my next show.
I mean, I think that those people are the ones that need to take pole classes. Like, clearly those
they were pole dancers.
Wow, they must have not have gotten that deep into it, because I feel like, I noticed, not to deviate too much, but online when I see people doing like comments of like the sexy shaming in pole, as we'll call it, it's generally people that are more new and really haven't delved into that, because they're like, well, I want to do this now and I don't want to have to explain myself that, you know, and to have to defend people's judgment. So I'm going to like judge everyone else and tell them to stop it, But then
That's right. And I think it is a very common trap for new players. But also, I think when you're young, you're so busy trying to define who you are. And sometimes that comes by the way you define yourself is by judging and putting down other people because you're like, well, I am this, but I am not that.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you kind of are more comfortable with who you are and hopefully you stop doing that so much. Or in my case, you get older and you just give zero fucks about what these people have to say about you online because I'm living my life the way I want to. And I hope that I'm being a positive example for a lot of people, and not everyone will think that I am, and that's fine. They can look to somebody else for guidance. But yeah, I definitely, sometimes it does hurt me still, but not really anymore. I just sort of think that they've got a lot of growth on their own personal journeys to do till they get to the point where they realize that online trolling and bullying is not a cool thing to do.
No, I mean, I give you so much credit. Like I know you deal with it a lot, but hopefully, you know how much you have more of a positive impact on people's lives than these people ever will. So
yeah,
it's like
I really hope so. Yeah, a lot of people messaged me personally after that they'd been at Miss Pole Dance Australia and they'd watched the performance, and a lot of them messaged me saying that that my performance really like rang true for them because, they were in work environments where they were made fun of for pole, or that, they were mums and the other mums at school had done this or done that. And they were like, thank you for making me feel, sort of reinvigorating their sense of strength and that. So that really meant a lot to me. I think as well, like the timing right after the US election as well, a lot of people were feeling kind of,
there was a lot of bullying going on in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a little Donald Trump reference in there as well in my performance, which when you watch it, you'll see it. But I don't know. I just wanted to just get up there and be like, yeah, I'm going to do what I am shamelessly and unapologetically. This is who I am, and if you find strength in that message as well, then that's great. And if it's not a message that you like, then bye, Felicia.
You don't need to write a nasty message about it. You can just go about your day.
Yeah. Or you can just watch something else.
For real. Like
plenty of cat videos online. You can watch those.
Yeah. But
awesome.
The quote I always go back to is if you're not offending anyone, you're boring everyone. So at least you're not boring. And before I let you sign off, can you, this is just compounding on everything else that you said, but can you leave us with an empowering message?
Ooh, an empowering message.
I know you spent them all earlier on the interview, but this is how we tie things up.
I guess if I was thinking about this the other day, like I saw something online somewhere about, it might have been Lux ACL or something, saying advice you would give to your younger self. And I guess if I could go back in time and give some advice to my younger self, it would be to stop trying to be nice to everybody and stop trying to make yourself so likable all the time, especially when you're in a situation where someone is doing something that makes you feel very uncomfortable and powerless. I think it's a tendency that we as women are raised to have, which is to try and make other people feel comfortable and feel at ease, even when they're putting us in extremely uncomfortable positions. So I guess if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, if you're feeling uncomfortable, stop worrying about trying to make the other person not notice that. Tell them you feel uncomfortable and don't let yourself be put in those situations. Speak up and tell them that you're uncomfortable, and also stop worrying about how people will react to the choices that you make in your life, because everyone will always have an opinion on what you do. But the only person whose opinion really matters at the end of the day is your own, because that's the person that you have to go to bed with every single night. So that's the advice I would give to my younger self, is to stop worrying so much about other people and how they feel and what they think, and do what feels right for you. So, yeah.
Fuck yeah. Brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on the show. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye. Good luck at pole camp.
Thank you. I'm going to need it. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Pole Parlour podcast. Want more? Visit poleparlor.com for show notes and to link to the Facebook group where you can connect with other poloholics and continue the conversation. Listen to past episodes and subscribe to new episodes on the website, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. Lots of love, babes. Thanks for listening.